My name is Michael. I'm a 28-year-old company employee. I work for a construction-related company. Since I joined this company right after graduating from high school, my career spans over 10 years now. Despite that, perhaps because I've been so engrossed in my work, these 10 years have flown by in the blink of an eye. I love my current job. That's because I have a dream I want to fulfill through my work. My dream is to become a top-notch architect and to build a house for my family. I love my family as much as, if not more than, my job. My family of 5, including my parents, younger brother, and younger sister, has always faced hardships together and supported each other. That's where I've always wanted to build a dream house for such a family, one that's comfortable, spacious, and relaxing. To put it bluntly, my family was quite poor. The 5 of us lived in a cramped, run-down apartment having only 2 bedrooms where we huddled together. In such a house, I never had my own room growing up, let alone my own desk. I was raised in a home where you would always see someone else no matter where you were. Moreover, our poverty was quite severe. We never had our water cut off, but there were times when we couldn't pay the electricity bill, and it would be cut off, and the gas was often shut off as well. Not being able to use hot water showers in the dead of winter is something I still remember as hellish. Yet, our home was always bright. Both my parents believed in living happily even if we were poor, and even when we shared the little food we had, they made it fun. That's why I've never resented my parents for our poverty. On the contrary, I'm only grateful to my parents for raising us even in such circumstances. The main reason our family was poor was that my father had always been frail and couldn't work long hours. Due to his chronic illness, he found it hard to work a full day and often had to quit jobs soon after starting due to his health. As a result, he struggled to find stable employment. In his place, my mother worked. Unlike my father, my mother was healthy and robust, and she firmly believed that those who can work should work. There's no rule that only fathers have to work, and took it upon herself to earn the income instead, considering it perfectly natural. However, in our family, with me being the eldest of 3 children, my mother played the triple role of childcare, housework, and work from dawn till dusk, always operating at full capacity, as far as I can remember. Moreover, she often had to take care of my father as well, so she couldn't become a full-time employee. She couldn't predict when my father might become ill, so she had to choose jobs that allowed for flexible hours. Moreover, my father's medical expenses were astonishingly high. That further exacerbated our family's constant lack of money. Still, without a single complaint, my mother encouraged our family, while running between 3 part-time jobs, supporting the household, taking care of my father, and raising us. That's why we think we can never turn our backs on our mother in this lifetime. Thanks to her, despite being poor and having a sick father, I never felt dissatisfied with my family. The only thing I often wished for was a slightly larger house. If we had just one more room where Dad could rest properly, he might be able to rest his body more. After all, right now, he's sleeping right next to where everyone's eating, so he can't possibly sleep peacefully. I wish my sister had a room where she could concentrate on her studies. She loves books so much. I want to give her the chance to study more. Always thinking this way, I happened to learn about the profession of an architect one day by chance. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that moment changed my life. It was while I was waiting for a friend in the high school library, flipping through a book that caught my eye by chance. I picked up that book purely by coincidence. The title was something like The Work of Architects, a sort of photo collection of houses built by famous architects around the world. Having hardly ever visited other people's homes and knowing only my own, it's needless to say that the content was a shock to me. What is this? The entrance hall alone is as big as my entire house. 2 wash basins. That's unheard of. The closet is practically a room in its own right. Every page unfolded a world I had never seen before. With each page I turned, I was amazed anew. Layouts, furnishings, and numerous rooms I had never seen before kept appearing one after another. And there were interviews with the architects who designed those homes. I designed a home where everyone can live happily. I designed a home where the family naturally gathers. I tried to create a home where you can relax as if you were in a hotel. Such comments captivated me. And suddenly, I felt a strong desire to build such homes. I wanted to build a spacious home where my family could live comfortably. This was the moment I decided to become an architect. I caught my teachers and bombarded them with questions about how to become someone who builds houses. Mr. Parker, I want to be someone who builds big houses. How can I become one? I had been rather laid back until then, so I think Mr. Parker was quite surprised when I suddenly started talking about my future dreams. Yet, he kindly listened to my questions. I learned that there are various jobs involved in house building, including designing the house, actually constructing it, and selling it. With that knowledge, I decided to become someone who designs. An architect, that is. The simplest and most effective way to become an architect was to go to a university and study in an architecture department. Graduating would at least qualify me to take the exam. However, there was a problem for me. I couldn't afford to go to university in the first place. My family's finances were always in a state of emergency, especially dire at the time. My father's illness had worsened, and we were receiving astronomical medical bills every month due to his continuous hospitalizations. Even attending a public high school was a stretch for us, something I fully understood. And I had a younger sister and a brother. My sister was quiet but good at studying, and I hoped to send her to university if possible. My brother was athletically gifted, and I wanted him to continue playing soccer. Money was already tight, and there were going to be more expenses for the younger two. In such circumstances, it was unthinkable for me, who had no particular talent, to ask to go to university. So I decided to get a job immediately after graduating high school. But my mother knew I had been secretly looking at architecture magazines and seemed to have a sense of what I wanted to do. "Michael, don't you really want to go to university?" I can still take on more part-time jobs. You'll need to take out student loans too, but if you want to go to university, you can." She even said things like that. But I shook my head to my mother's words. "It's okay. I can definitely achieve what I want to do while working." My mother suggested university several more times, but I steadfastly refused each time. I joined a mid-tier general contractor company. Originally, the company didn't hire high school graduates as new employees, but Mr. Parker from my high school, who knew about my dream, went out of his way to visit the company and ask them to hire me. It's not a big deal to go and ask for a favor if you have finally found your dream, Mr. Parker said with a smile, then added seriously. "You don't have to go to university to become an architect. Work at this company for the first 10 years. Once you've accumulated enough practical experience, you'll be eligible to take the exam. In the meantime, study about construction and architecture more diligently than anyone else. You can do it. Go for it." Even though Mr. Parker wasn't my homeroom teacher, he encouraged me like this. He might have simply sympathized with my family situation, but I believed in his words and vowed to work hard to build my dream house someday. My first assignment was what you might call field work. All my colleagues who had graduated from university were assigned to the head office. Only I, a high school graduate, was sent to the field. Having assumed I would be wearing a suit and working with a computer, my expectations were immediately subverted when I started the job. Instead of a suit, I wore work clothes, carried heavy materials, did tasks akin to security work, ran errands for my seniors, completely different from the job I had imagined. Every day after work, I was drenched in sweat, and my work clothes were covered in dirt. Even for someone like me who doesn't usually sweat the small stuff, commuting on the train in work clothes among businessmen in suits was indeed tough. And because I was new to everything, I often got yelled at by my seniors, and there were countless times I had to grit my teeth and hold back tears. "Hey, Michael, what are you doing? You can't just leave materials there, they'll get ruined. Use your brain a bit. Michael, move all these iron pipes over there. You're skipping lunch until you're done." Despite the unreasonable demands, I endured and dedicated myself to the job. Because I had my family at home, I was able to keep going. With the sole intention of one day giving my family a big house, I worked tirelessly. Eventually, my attitude began to be appreciated, and my seniors started to teach me the intricacies of the job. It seemed that my dedication to working for my family had become well known. "Hey, Michael, it's payday today, so you can knock off early. Go bring your earnings home to your family." "Thank you." "Michael, there's some extra sandwiches today. The leftovers are yours. Eat them yourself or take them home, whatever you like." "Really? Thank you so much." They even started to show concern for me in such ways. Even though my earnings weren't enough to pull us out of poverty, my father's condition had stabilized somewhat, allowing my sister to aim for university and my brother to attend a high school known for its strong soccer team. Despite being constantly ragged on at the site every day, I was able to persevere thanks to great seniors, a loving family, and having a dream. After 3 solid years of learning the ropes on site, I was transferred to work at the head office. My colleagues on site celebrated my transfer as if it were their own achievement. Even when you start working in a suit, don't forget what you learned here. Architecture relies on the site to exist. Remember that design and sales are nothing without us. I understand. Thank you so much for everything. I was assigned to the sales department next, but on the first day, I felt completely out of place, like a fish out of water. I struggled with everything, from how to answer phones to greetings, especially the proper use of polite words. On site, to my seniors, a simple yep was enough to get by. But in an office job, nobody says yep. I was bewildered by the sudden shift from physical labor to almost exclusively sitting at a computer. Moreover, my colleagues were all university graduates, people who looked like they'd never do field work in their lives. Some already had their architect licenses, and I, without even the qualifications to take the exam, couldn't help feeling inferior. If only I could have gone to university. Though it was unavoidable, I felt the injustice of having to take the long way around and envied my university-educated colleagues, leading to some dark days. But with my heart set on realizing my dream, I persevered through gritted teeth. Then one day, as I was leaving for work in the morning, I found a letter in the mailbox. I usually didn't pay much attention to mail, but this one was sticking out halfway, so I picked it up out of curiosity. It was a letter from an unknown sender. Feeling suspicious, I opened the letter. It contained a strange message. "Dear Michael, the day your dream comes true is drawing near." I read the letter over and over, trying to understand its meaning. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't figure out who sent it or what dream it referred to. Yet, that letter somehow planted a small seed of hope in my heart. From that day on, I looked forward to going to work. For some reason, the letter made me feel like I was truly making progress toward my dream. Without any concrete reason, but feeling this way, my feelings of inferiority naturally faded away. I even began to enjoy conversations with my coworkers. "Michael, something good happened recently. You seem to be in great spirits." "Well, I got this mysterious letter. It made me decide to really go for my dream." A mysterious letter. That sounds interesting. Maybe it's a sign that something amazing is about to happen. I hope so. I have no idea who sent it. I wish I had a clue. As I talked about the letter, the other person would often share his own dream in return. Talking about each other's dreams and hopes brought us closer together. I gradually began to enjoy talking about my dreams. Encouraged by the mysterious words of the letter, I felt compelled to take the necessary steps toward making my dreams come true. Until then, I had been too exhausted from work to do anything but sleep when I got home, but I started a new routine of working at the company during the day and studying late into the night to obtain my architect's license. My colleagues supported me in this endeavor. Michael, if there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me anything. Yeah, thanks. Actually, I wanted to ask about this page. Studying late into the night after work was sometimes tiring and made me sleepy. But the words in the letter gave me strength. And a few years later, I finally seemed to be qualified to take the exam. At that moment, I felt all my efforts were rewarded. Yes. My next goal was to pass the exam and get license of architect. Then I was assigned to the design department. Although there was a lot to learn from scratch again, I gradually began to be involved in design work. My colleagues were friendly and very kind. Most of them held an architect's license, making conversations with them enjoyable. Michael, you're aiming to get an architect license next, right? Yeah, now that it's come to this, I'm determined to get the architect license. I believe you can do it, Michael. We're all supporting you, so keep at it. I continued to study hard while working. Of course, it was for my family. My mother, who worked from morning till night even after turning 60, my father, who lived brightly despite his recurring illnesses, my sister, my brother, and there was one more family member for me. My wife, Jessica. I married Jessica not long after I was transferred to the design department. I had been dating Jessica since my days working on site, and she, with her cheerful and kind nature, had always supported me. Wearing a suit to work doesn't make you great. You, who work hard, are really cool. I couldn't afford to live alone and had always lived with my family, but Jessica understood my family's situation and background. Not everyone can start working for their family right after high school graduation. Educational background doesn't matter. Michael, you're an amazing person. Jessica would come to our cramped apartment to fold laundry and willingly take care of my father when my mother couldn't leave her work. And when I'm qualified to take the exam, she said, "Congratulations. Next is that you pass the exam, right? I want to help you achieve that dream." And married me. How lucky I was to marry such a wonderful woman. As I savored this happiness, something even more surprising happened. The apartment Jessica found for us as our new home was right next to my parents' place. The apartment had become even more rundown over the years, so it seems we were able to rent it easily. We don't need to live extravagantly just because we're newlyweds. Plus, it's reassuring to have your family close by. Jessica quickly became close with my family, and my sister and brother became as fond of her as if she were their real sister. With a wonderful family and a fulfilling job, I was truly a blessed man. But I was not so fortunate with my boss. The head of the design department, Daniel, was particularly hard on me from the beginning. I remember when I was first assigned, he said in front of me, "What's HR thinking? Bringing in a high school graduate? He won't be of any use," making it clear he had it out for me. Daniel believed that academic credentials were everything and seemed to thoroughly look down on me for being a high school graduate. One day, Daniel was irritated about something that hadn't gone well. Noticing me, he approached with a smirk. "Michael, I hear you have experience on construction sites. Wouldn't that suit you better as a high school graduate? Academic background is important for an architect. This job is simply beyond you." As I couldn't say a word, he suddenly seemed to have an idea. "All right, let's give it a try. I'll add you to the design team for a new project. I'll give you a chance to improve your skills, so do your best." I thanked Daniel for his words, not realizing his face was twisted with malice. This project was a big one that even Daniel was involved in, essentially a make or break for the company. Excited to finally be involved in a project, I rushed home to tell Jessica all about it. I've finally been recognized as a full-fledged member. Jessica was as happy for me as if it were her own achievement. Congratulations, do your best. However, my joy was cruelly betrayed. The tasks assigned to me on that team were frankly nothing more than menial chores. Copying documents for meetings, arranging for coffee and lunches, organizing transportation. I thought I had finally taken a step towards a new path, but it seems Daniel had no such intentions. He just wanted to bask in a sense of superiority by having me, the errand boy, around. In meetings with people from other companies, Daniel would deliberately point out my mistakes, berate me, and smirk, making me hold back tears of frustration time and again. "Hey, Michael, this document is missing a crucial page. Can high school graduates even make copies properly?" "Hey, Michael, who wants to eat fried food in the middle of a meeting? Think about the attendees' preferences. Even a high school graduate has a brain, right?" The documents Daniel had given me were already missing a page from the start, and it was Daniel who had instructed me to order the fried food special lunch. But pointing that out would only lead to harsher treatment from him, which was clear as day. So I couldn't tell anyone the truth and just had to swallow my pride. Well, there was one person who would listen to my complaints. My wife, Jessica. Jessica had an enveloping aura about her, and I found myself telling her about everything that happened at work every night. "Michael, you sound just like a little boy." Even as she said this, Jessica would listen attentively to my stories. Maybe I was drawn to her maternal nature. As a child, with my mother often away at work, I had no one to share my daily experiences with. So perhaps I was overly dependent on Jessica. Daniel told me to find lunch with plenty of fried food to power up, and then, in front of everyone, he deliberately opened the box lid and completely rejected the lunch I had ordered. "It's really terrible, but he must be jealous of your talent. Keep at it, and you'll prove him wrong someday." Just hearing Jessica say that made me feel like I could keep going the next day. But Daniel's harassment only grew worse day by day. Then, one day, a major incident occurred. That day, there was a significant meeting for the project at our company. Other companies involved in the project were also gathering, so I remember the morning being particularly hectic. As usual, I was swamped with menial tasks, setting up the meeting room, preparing documents, and arranging various small details. Especially since Daniel had suddenly decided to change some documents at the last minute, adding to the chaos. Finally, when the preparations were done and we were just waiting for the members to arrive, I noticed something was amiss. The paper bag I had placed on my desk had vanished into thin air. I was sure I had brought it and remembered placing it on my desk that morning. I searched around my desk and even on other people's desks, but it was nowhere to be found. After all, the bag contained something important, so I wouldn't have placed it on the floor or anywhere other than my desk. I approached a colleague nearby. "Excuse me, have you seen the paper bag that was on my desk?" "Oh, I think I saw Daniel take it earlier, maybe." "Daniel took it? For what?" "I don't know the details, but I saw him rummaging through the bag and then he just walked away with it." I had a bad feeling about this. Could it be? I hurried to find Daniel and asked about the bag. "Daniel, I have something I'd like to ask you about." Then, he responded with words I could never have anticipated. "Oh, you mean that bag? Since you brought it and clutching it to your chest, I checked inside as your supervisor." As a supervisor, but no supervisor has the right to touch someone else's belongings without permission. And then, I saw something dull-colored, like trash. When I took it out, it turned out to be a hand-knitted sweater. Yes, what I had brought that day was a sweater knitted by my wife, Jessica. but it was so poorly made and tacky that I threw it away, sorry." Hearing that, I was simply dumbstruck. Jessica spent a whole year knitting it. It was a true masterpiece. I found myself muttering, "You're finished." "Huh?" Just then, someone entered the room. "Hey, this paper bag was thrown away outside. What's the deal with this?" Holding the paper bag I had brought in one hand, the person asked with a stern face. "Mr. Thompson?" Yes, it was Mr. Thompson, the president of our company, who had entered. Mr. Thompson continued to ask in a stern tone, "Who threw away this paper bag?" It seemed that Daniel also realized there was some connection between the paper bag and Mr. Thompson. Daniel was momentarily at a loss for words. But since everyone in the room had witnessed Daniel's and my exchange, he couldn't deny his involvement. With a forced smile, he said, "Well, this paper bag brought by Michael here contained something like a sweater, but the knitting was all messed up and it looked tacky, so I took it upon myself to throw it away." Watching Daniel explain with a smug smile, Mr. Thompson's expression grew even more severe. "So, you're saying you threw away someone's belongings without saying a word to Michael?" "Well, yes, but it was all for the company." "For the company?" "Yes, if someone wore such a tacky and tasteless sweater at the company, it would affect our company's dignity." Then Mr. Thompson said sharply, "Sorry for the lack of taste." Daniel looked up at Mr. Thompson with a confused expression, and Mr. Thompson glared at him fiercely. "This sweater was knitted by my niece for me. I don't think it's your place to criticize it." "Niece? But why would Michael have it?" I looked straight at Daniel and said, "Because she's my wife." "What?" "Jess, in fact, Jessica is Mr. Thompson's brother's daughter. Jessica's biological parents had died in an accident when she was very young. Since then, Mr. Thompson had almost taken on the role of a parent, raising Jessica. However, Mr. Thompson had 3 children of his own, so life wasn't always easy for Jessica. Although they were wealthy, it seems she lived feeling out of place and constantly holding back. Having lost her parents at a young age and grown up without knowing what a family was, Jessica said she felt truly happy when she met our family. Becoming a part of our family, she began to feel gratitude towards Mr. Thompson, who had raised her. As a token of gratitude, Jessica knitted the sweater, despite not being used to it, with all her might. Yesterday, Jessica had called Mr. Thompson to express her gratitude directly. "It's really poorly made, but I knitted a sweater for you, Uncle. I know you're sensitive to the cold, so I hoped it might keep you a bit warmer." I could hear Mr. Thompson's voice, choked with tears, thanking her repeatedly over the phone. Hearing Mr. Thompson's words, both Jessica and I were moved to tears. But now, that very sweater had been thrown away by Daniel. Mr. Thompson said, with as much anger in his voice as possible, "I'm not angry because it was a gift from my niece. I'm angry that someone in this company would stoop so low as to throw away someone else's belongings. You understand what this means, right?" "And that would be..." Mr. Thompson didn't say anything else but turned away from Daniel and faced me again. "I had intended to look out for you, but I didn't realize you were being treated so poorly. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner." I stopped Mr. Thompson, who seemed about to apologize. "Please don't apologize, Mr. Thompson. I plan to prove Daniel wrong in my own way." Mr. Thompson looked surprised for a moment, probably having heard from Jessica that I was aiming to get an architect license. Then he smiled. "Right. I've often heard about you within a company. The site supervisors have praised you as well, and I'm confident you'll do just fine." Mr. Thompson placed his hand on my shoulder, squeezing it reassuringly as he spoke. Then, turning back to Daniel with a stern expression, he declared, "I'm disappointed at you. I'll give you my decision on this matter within a few days." Daniel was still in a daze. "Yes." Throughout the project meeting that day, Daniel seemed utterly dispirited. Whenever he was asked a question, he would stutter, oh yes, well, causing nothing but frustration for the others. Meanwhile, I was able to provide clear answers to all questions posed. Even though I had only been assigned menial tasks for the project, I had secretly read through all the documents and researched any information I thought necessary. I knew the content better than anyone else. It seemed Mr. Thompson had been observing me from behind. At the end of the day's meeting, Mr. Thompson called me aside and unexpectedly praised me. "You have potential. You should be more involved in this project. Starting tomorrow, you'll replace Daniel as the leader." Mr. Thompson added, "Please tell Jessica thank you for the sweater, and tell her she's found a good husband." From the next day, I was involved in the project as the leader, and somehow we managed to complete the building over the course of a year. I was worried whether the team would follow my sudden leadership, but it seemed everyone had seen my efforts all along. "Michael, you can do it. We've got your back, so keep it up." Work became busier, but thanks to continuing my studies at night, I successfully passed the architect exam. At that moment, Jessica smiled and shared with me. It turned out just like the letter said. I was the one who sent it. Daniel was transferred to the field shortly thereafter. But having never worked outside of an office before, it seems he couldn't cope. He resigned soon after, and nobody knows what became of him. Now that I've found a bit of free time, I'm working towards realizing my dream: a home for my family. When the house is completed, we'll be able to start a new life in a new place. I'm excited about creating a new space where my family's happiness can flourish.